Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Professor Ben Israel. As you mentioned, I'm now 2.5 months in this office. It feels like a decade, very intense. What is the new directorate and where we're heading? Of course, we'll elaborate just shortly. As I was described, now finishing 30 years in the business of then we called it SIGINT. Cyber is a new term. I'm going to talk about this odd term of cyber, dealing with the, let's say, the national security and the darker sides of computing, of telecommunication, what we usually commonly call cybersecurity. Today, now building the new directorate, one more phase of the evolution of Israel in cybersecurity, where we're heading, and that's what I'm going to talk just shortly. But first of all, what is cyber and what we're talking about? The cyber thing, well, I'm not very fond of the cyber. I grew up in a world that the cyber was not there, and still we've done a lot of things with the cellulars, with the telecommunications, with computers, and then the cyber issue, the cyber thing evolved or popped up, and everyone now uses it. It's okay. We need some term to describe something. If you ask your kids, my kids, I have 10 years old, my younger is 10 years old, he doesn't know what cyber, well, he knows because he hears his father at home. But cyber for him, he doesn't need a term to describe life, reality, where he lives, work, unfortunately for his parents all the time, using his cell phone and other screens. But it's something that we need, and I'm 46 years old, and I'm one of the oldest guys in the cyber directorate. One of the issues dealing with it. My predecessor also entered this position 6 years ago, also about 45, 46 years old. It's not very common in the government service in this level, but this is the business because of technology, because of the pace of evolution. So we still need a term to describe it, to tag it. But I believe a couple of years, maybe 10 years from now, we'll use other terms than the cyber to describe what we are living at and how to counter the dark side of it, the abuse of these methods against us, against society, against democracies, against everything. Another term or a commonly argument is that we used to have 4 dimensions of battlefields. The first, the traditional thousands of years, is the ground dimension. Then, also thousands of years, the sea, the naval dimension. Then, only 100 years almost ago, the aerial dimension, and a couple of dozens of years, the space dimension. And now we have the 5th dimension, the cyber dimension. Well, if you look not too closely even about the other 4, you'll see cyber everywhere. Well, it's not a different dimension, but it has its specific or a unique elements that they differ from the others. But we find cyber in the ground, in the navy, in the area, and of course in space. It's everywhere, so it's not like a safari with the closed borders that you enter in and you see the animals and then you go out for your daily business. No, it's around us, it's everywhere, and it's getting more and more deeper to what we're all having and dealing and living it. It's still in the move to build concepts and game rules. Well, we're in the early stages. The norms, the international norms, the regulations, the law is very, very immature, let's say, and I don't see a growing pace running towards stabilization or forming common grounds in this manner. It has many reasons, but something that we must bear in mind and think closely whether it's the right methods or the right tools or the right medicines that we use in other fields, are they relevant also for this cyber thing? Just to wake up. And a few main factors, well, it's everywhere, everything. IoT, I believe everyone in this room already familiar with this term, Internet of Things. I believe in this room we have more than a couple of dozens, maybe hundreds of IoT things, some of them connecting to the internet independently. They don't need us to interact with the net. They need it because that's how technology, in a couple of years, not very long, couple of years, we'll see more and more of that. It means much more, a wider attack surface. We're going to talk about it also. A core impact on awareness and ideas. We all consume most of our news, media, entertainment through internet, through digital media, where this whole day, this whole meeting is under a digital diplomacy. Well, this is it. This is where we live. And we are mainly youngsters having their ideas and understanding the world, political world, and other things through the internet. So they're vulnerable. We are all more vulnerable to be affected and to be abused by bad actors, threat cyber actors through this. I'm going to show you examples of that also. We have a hegemony of few multinational companies like these. They are stronger than many of nation state. Even the US federal government struggles with some of them. If you remember the FBI, San Bernardino, Apple case, and others, no need to elaborate on that. Personalization, internet getting more and more personalized, something that belongs to us. And we're talking from CNE to CNA. What does this mean? CNA, computer networks exploit, it means collecting information through cyber. CNA, it's assault, it's harming, causing damage, both to data or to physical assets through the cyber. So cyber tool can get this objective and the other objective very easily with the same attack vector. Once I get dominance, I get control over others, computer, mobile, or anything of this like, I can do almost everything that I want. We have now also the CNI, the influence thing. That's, again, a little elaborate later. Law and regulation were far behind. I feel that the pace is even getting worse. The technology runs much faster than all other human societies run with the other norms, legislations, and the other things. So one fraction of society, humankind, the technology fraction, runs in this space, and the other fractions of how to deal with it runs, or not running, walking pretty slowly. It's somewhat of disturbing that we need to take care of and make compensations for that. Implications, well, asymmetry, basically. The balance is in favor for the bad guys. So those who run on the technology fraction and understand what I'm talking about, they have the upper hand because the other side is still running slowly or walking slowly with legislation, with norms and other things. And we need to understand that in order to have other compensations, other medicines for this disease. Privacy versus national security, again, part of the asymmetry. We, gathered here, we all represent open, democratic, liberal societies. We are very keen to keep privacy issues and human values. The other side, well, less keen for that, and again, abuses our concern about privacy issues against us, and in cyber, it's getting more and more dangerous. Vulnerability of liberal democratic societies against or because of manipulation and awareness things, we have a soft belly. The other side, well, they have, but much stronger belly than us. We are more vulnerable to be manipulated, to be affected in these issues. And again, I'll show you a few examples. We already hear it in the news. Insiders, what we call the Y generation and other youngsters today, looking more and more on an egoistic point of view. They're more concerned about the me and less about us. It's no wonder that we have more and more Snowden cases and other insider problems. In cyber, it can be as danger and as critical as a superpower attack, because someone inside that have privileges and have access to the secrets or to the key to run a nuclear power plant and others can be as damaged as an attack by a foreign hostile superpower. So what we are facing, and again, it's such a lovely morning. I feel bad that I'm talking now a little dark, but cybersecurity. So this is welcome to my world. First, ransomware. I believe if I'll ask you to raise hands, who heard about this term 5 years ago, you'll see no hands up. 2 years ago, maybe a few hands. Today, I believe nobody will keep his hands down. No, everyone knows this term. Why? Because this is something that only waited to happen. Someone that can hijack others' computers, other databases, and release it only after getting ransom. Well, it's between us, it's a great innovative idea. The problem is on the dark side. Now think not only on financial aspect, but political, ideological aspect. I don't recall that we faced that yet, but we fear that we're going to face demands against hijacking databases, government databases, critical databases, health insurance and others, released only after releasing political prisoners or terrorists or other achieving other ideological demands, as we saw terrorist groups doing in the kinetic, in the physical world. Super weapons proliferation, this is something, a leakage of superpower weapons in cyber. Well, in nuclear weapons, we saw that only in Hollywood movies. God forbid, knock on wood, let's hope it will hit only there. That nuclear weapons leaked from the superpowers to terrorist groups. In cyber weapons, we've seen it already and more than once. That a superpower techniques, superpower tools, and super weapons went to the other side and got reused against those who created it. Mainly, the most famous is, of course, the NSA tools, but we find it everywhere. Why? Because the nature of cyber weapons is something that is not, usually, it doesn't kill itself. It doesn't explode after, by the impact, by using. And those who are skilled enough can take the code and reuse it or abuse it against others. This is something that a couple of years ago, when in the intelligence community, we did our assessment, yearly assessment, and we talked about threat actors. We used to say, okay, they're small, they're mediocre, they are not there yet. They don't need to be. They just need to be enough level of expertise to adopt or to get others' superpower with all its money and human force, weapons, and take it and use it with their own bad means and needs. Critical infrastructure. Well, everyone knows about critical infrastructure. What is really critical infrastructure is something that's getting redefined or updated all the time. We used to think about this watering and electricity and others, they're all correct. But if we close our eyes and think what is really critical, you don't need to look too much deeper inside. Just see what the bad guys are aiming at. And we see more and more aiming against what I call trust issues. They're trying to undermine the trust, the basic trust that we all open liberal democratic societies rely on, trust on democratic system, on political system, on financial system. So you don't need to kill all the electricity or stop the trains or have the traffic lights go berserk. That's also something that can be done and will cause damage. You just need to undermine the trust of larger portion of public against the political system. Just see what happened in the US presidential election. Or at the financial system. Just see what's happening in different places in the world against a specific bank or specific credit card system and so on. And the collapse can be very short and very devastating. And you can achieve that in cyber more than in any other method in history. And that's a problem that as we get more and more digital, as we get more and more dependent on digital life, digital in every aspect of life, we are more vulnerable. Specifically, aviation is something that bothers us, and Israel is now pioneering. I say almost unfortunately, because I wanted other bigger countries and bigger industries to pioneer that. We are pioneering in aviation cybersecurity. As we see this Boeing 787 and some of the Airbuses, they are more and more digitalized, cyber, have more infotainment in higher level. That's great. They are designed by safety perfectly, as I understand. By security, very poorly designed. So we find more and more attack vectors and vulnerabilities and exploits in too many aspects of aviation ecosystem. Then we can keep it like this. So we are now forming a coalition with the United States and with the European countries, and I hereby send my invitation also to you, whoever wants to join us in building a strong coalition, industry and regulations to raise up, even little will be dramatic, the cybersecurity in aviation. Influence campaigns, well, here in 2016 something really dramatic happened. Now we're all discovering it from the news, from the media. The US federal government knew it back then. Well, there's a manipulation. How deep, how really it influenced the election, I don't know. I think nobody can tell. But just we now understand that other threat actor, a foreign country, a foreign motivations, and foreign interests get deep inside a political system of other country, mainly through cyber. And I'm not talking about hiring or building avatars, false identities in Facebook, 80,000 of them. It's dramatic. It's something that I don't call it cyber, it's a problem that they need to take care of. But they just see that they hacked the email, the private email of Senator Schultz, the chairman of the DNC, the Democratic National Conference, and published all the mails just 24 hours before the DNC started. Something that caused their resignation, a big fuss, and again undermining the trust, in this case, of some of the voters in the United States against some of undermine the trust at the political system or specific the democratic system. This is something that should bother us, and in this I like to show this example. This is not new. This example is from 2013, 5 years ago, exactly 5 years ago, April. You see April? It was 2 weeks, about 2 weeks after the Boston Marathon explosions. A kinetic terror attack caused a lot of terror and fear in the US a couple of weeks afterwards. Then in the middle of the day, 1 p.m., Associated Press, reputed, prestiged media, news agency, Twitter account, popped this breaking: 2 explosions in the White House and Barack Obama is injured, looks authentic. What happens immediately afterwards, you see that, this is the Dow Jones. This spike costs about $30 billion. And it took about 7 minutes for Associated Press to wake up and understand something that happened and correct it and issue a correction and say, well, okay, we hacked, it's a fake news, and you see everything looks to seem okay again. But what really bothering, again, 5 years ago, is it was done, what does it take to make such a big noise? Well, it took this, you don't recognize this logo. It's the Syrian Electronic Army. 4 mediocre Syrian regime hackers. They have internet connection. They have, again, 4, we all know them today by names. They have a basic knowledge and they have understanding of the target's minds. This is the main issue. Again, 5 years ago, 4 hackers, low level, see what they caused. This is the problem we're now facing. Now take this 2018 and forward, and what we need to deal with, more and more understanding of this case by terror groups, by financial groups, criminal financial groups, and others. This is something that we need to take care of. In the technology side, we have a wider attack surface because we're getting more and more into the cloud, into a remote access, and other aspects. I'm told that the time is running up, so I'll run shortly against a few lessons that we learned and we want to share with you. First of all, if we used to think of cybersecurity as building big fortresses and fortifying them and having crocodile trenches with waters around us, well, it's not enough. We need to take care of what I call supply chain, now it's very common, to know the roads between the fortresses, because that's where the hackers work. Not trying to crash into the walls, but going through the authentic ways, through the common ways, the main gates. This is what we call supply chain. Second, well, no single defense or weapon is good enough. Never rely on one method or one measure, whether it's on defense or other means. It will collapse eventually in cyber even faster than you think. Next, the biggest problems begins very small. That's again in cyber, maybe in other fields also. I told you in medicine also, in epidemiology. But here, it's crucial to realize and to detect the small and the earliest signs of anomalies in the network. And it shouldn't be in your country. It can be other places as well, because the attackers usually try weapons elsewhere before they have the main attack, the main vector against the main target. What should we do? First, seek the attacker. Don't wait at home. Don't wait until something comes, because you're already lost. If you're just holding the door and hope that at your doorstep it will be sufficient, then you're already lost. And again, I'm not saying any word about the TV series. Maybe you know it, maybe not. It's all about cyber. Trust me. Second, it takes one to know one. Well, 30 years in my working in the SIG and cyber, well, most of the 30 years, let's say 27 years of that, were not even remotely related to defense. Only past 3.5 years, I'm dealing more and more with defense. It is crucial to mix between those who think operatively and those who think defensively, let's say, in these words, because it's basically the same methods. If you want to defend yourself against the best hackers, hire the best hackers, get the best hackers' knowledge, whether it's industry or other countries. And again, Israel can offer little of both. Cooperation, well, leave no place to hide. If we cooperate, and this is the main message of this talk, this is the only way, the only efficient way to get a cybersecurity or cyberspace secured enough. Because the worst nightmare of a hacker is that light is shed everywhere. Hacker lives and works in the dark. From Iran to Israel, they'll never attack directly. They'll pave the way through India and then Netherlands and then Slovakia, and only there they'll get to Israel, because they need to hide. They want the attribution to be as far as the attack as they can get. So if we can get together and share and cooperate between Netherlands, Slovakia and India, then they cannot get out of Iran or Russia or any other place that they want to get, or Ukraine or whatever. This is what I'm calling shedding the light everywhere. And this is something that is much more achievable than in other fields, because it's internet, it's connectivity, it's bringing things together. And today we have more and more fields of cooperation in this manner. I run this fastly, as told about already before, it's all about people. It's all about people on the attacker side. You must understand the motivation, the basic understanding of who is attacking you. And of course, and this is a true example, by the way, don't follow this, it's not very smart, but it's also understanding the weakest part of our cybersecurity network, it's us. It's the human people. We're doing the mistakes, both by coding codes that are vulnerable and exploits are all over the place. And again, we're opening an email, even though we know that it's dangerous and so on. So we need to understand and never forget this. It's not technology, it's not bits and bytes, it's humans. A few words about the Israel cyber journey, just to close things up. Here, as Professor Ben Israel mentioned, well, the main thing that you can see here is that's the PowerPoint doesn't have the other side of the curve, but it should be on the opposite side because the pace is getting faster. It took us 10 years to understand that we need someone, an agency, a federal agency, to take care of critical infrastructure. Before we understood it's not enough. And in 10 years after establishing the NISA in the Shin Bet, in my previous agency, we established the Cyber Bureau. Under Prime Minister, it was a big thing, but it just showed it's only the tip of the iceberg and we need more. So we established another security authority dealing only with the operational security side on the civilian cyberspace. It wasn't enough also. So it took us another 2 years to understand we must unify it and bring a new thing. And this is the new Directorate. I'm heading, again, 2.5 months now converging these both agencies. Very briefly, what we're doing, we're dealing with all these aspects. First, secure and safe cyberspace. Very shortly, we have, it's very simple to understand, 3 layers of a concept of operation. First, robustness is, if they take the medical or hygiene analogy, it's washing hands, it's washing fruits and vegetables before we eat. It's the basic things to avoid getting sick. But we understand, like in real life, like in medicine, also in cyber, eventually we'll probably get ill, get sick. So the second part is resilience. And resilience is how fast we can recover and how on our feet will end after attack happens. How less scars will remain in our body, in our system after such an attack. The third is understanding that it's about people. So not only taking care of the attacks, but going after the attacker's neck and neutralize it and dealing with it like any other attacker. And we always, the common phrase, it's there's no cyber attack, there's an attack. Can be kinetic, cybernetic, or other. Attack is an attack, and the attacker should be taken care of and brought to justice or to any other means of neutralization because it's an attack. The resilience thing is something that I find more unique to Israel, and we're putting more effort in all over the cyberspace. It's not just one sector or another sector. We're dealing with all the cyberspace and helping everyone that needs to recover and to get clean from an attack. Second is one civic operational address. If we take a look of robustness, resilience, and defense, and of course the infrastructures, we have now a clear responsibility. We have a clear address for any of this. We have, for the defense, we have those agencies, the traditional ISA, the Shin Bet, the Mossad, the IDF. The other side, the robustness, we have sectoral regulators like the central bank, like the energy sector and others. The INCD, my directorate, is responsible, first of all, of coordinating, see the full picture, and second, for leading the resilience, mainly on the civilian side. The military have the IDF and others. Second, on the infrastructure level, we're responsible for getting the legal framework, to have regulations, and to see, again, coordination of all other agencies working in the same directions and under the consolidated efforts. This is the organ chart. Mainly look at the 3 efforts of robustness efforts, resilience and defense efforts, and build capacity. And this is the third and last part of the strategy. We're not looking just at the operational side, we understand that it's an ecosystem that needs to be taken care of all over 360 degrees. So we have SciTech human capital, academic research, like here the ICRC, Blavatnik Institute, and of course industry. Industry, we have more than 300 companies. By the way, 1 out of any 10 new startups succeed. The other 9 collapse. But the 9 that collapse fertilize the grounds for the one that succeeded, with the knowledge, with the human capital and so on. So it grows all the time, and one of the 1/10 of it become, and it gets to be Checkpoint and other big companies. We have here in Be'er Sheva, the cyberspark. By the way, if anyone hasn't visited there yet, then contact us. Chagai, raise your hand here, is our international cooperation officer, and please come and bring delegation to see. It's really a miracle there. It's a couple of buildings just across the railway to the university, and you see the international players. Not all of them, but most of them have presence there, have subsidiaries there. We have the national CERT, the Israeli CERT, already there. We have Deutsche Telekom and IBM, Dell EMC, and all the others, all working together in the same atmosphere, the same physical ecosystem. So, to wrap things up, international cooperation, this is you and us. This is a crucial and critical a factor in our cybersecurity national concept and strategy. Because, as I told you, it's not enough to just stand at the door and hope that things will be stopped at the doorstep. We understand that it's something that should be all around, that if we want to be healthy and to take care of our health, it must be in a community aspect. And we need all the others, friends and allies, also to be healthy and cooperate in this manner. There's a lot to be said about that. Examples of few of international cooperation organizations that we're a member of. We are also considering of establishing one of our own with higher standards and more openness in sharing information. And this is something that I offer to you to join us. So I think I stop here. I have a few days to talk, but I'm told that your time is busy. So I really want to thank you, and remember that about partnerships, and we're looking forward to work with you and share our experience, both in the technological and operational side, and in the more federal or government aspects of how to build robustness, how to engage with critical infrastructures, and in any other aspects. We really see it not just an Israeli thing, but an international thing to raise up the level of cybersecurity in order to make everyone, specifically Israel, but everyone on the higher level of security.